Welcome to the Level Up Podcast. I am here with Shakeel, and I am so excited to have Shakeel on the show because we are actually going to be making a show about him. It's not really about him. Honestly, that was a really bad way to introduce him, but the show is starring him, and it's
a show about me is okay. I am an egotist.
Oh, that works out.
Yeah.
So I'll have him do a better introduction of himself instead of me doing a really, really crappy introduction. So, Shakeel, please tell the world of podcasting who you are.
So my name is Shakeel. I am someone who is really involved in politics and have been for a really long time, but I've always been looking for ways to reach more people in a more effective way, and that's why I'm really excited about doing this show. I think I have a distinct view of politics, and it's one that's really focused on what we can try to accomplish as a group and less focused on fighting with each other. I think that the fighting aspect of politics is particularly damaging to our society. I don't think of myself as someone who's really interested in media in general, and in fact, when I used to write a column for the Longmont Observer, that was my preferred outlet. It was writing because it was anonymous and it was faceless. But what I'm learning over time is that the other forms of media like video and audio have so much more reach, and you can convey so much more depth of emotion and sincerity that I'm really excited to be diving into this because I think that hopefully I can bring a couple people along with me about how important it is that we fight less and communicate more.
Yeah, that's awesome. What's the name of the show?
So the name of the show is going to be Values with Shakeel.
Love it. Nice and easy.
Yeah,
it works
well,
out. And then you discuss
it was
the
literally the
values,
first
right?
thing I thought of.
Oh, that's even better. Sometimes the first thing you think of can always be the best idea, even though you kind of can go to the other ideas and try that one out and be like, it's okay. You go to the other one, you're like, ooh, that's pretty okay, and then you always loop back to the first one. You're like, oh, actually, that was the good one, and then you kind of go from there.
Well, I never even wanted my name to be part of the show.
Okay.
Because contrary to your introduction, right, and my joke about being an egotist, I don't want the show to be about me. I really want the show to be about the values that I think we all share as a community, and how if we focus on those values, we can fight less and work more together towards the things that we all want anyway.
Yeah, of course. So I have you here on the podcast today strictly because I am so excited to be helping you produce this show, but also because I really want to kind of get your perspective and your viewpoints on what it's like to kind of be producing a television show, and what that creative process is kind of like for you, somebody that's never even thought about having a television show.
So that has by far been the most intimidating aspect. Mm-hmm. I don't think of myself as a media savvy person or even a creative person. I knew that I wanted to do a show. I had this idea for a show that conveyed these things. And the first couple of test shots that I did by myself were literally just me putting a cell phone on a tripod and trying to film myself with some pre-written segments. And they were so bad. And you know that because you watched them.
I did.
And my hope was that, and part of what I'm really excited about with Longmont Public Media is that you can put things out there and share them within the Longmont Public Media community and get other people interested, and they can bring their skills to the table. And that's part of why I've been really excited to have you on board with this, because you have a lot of those video and audio skills that I simply don't have, and it would take me a very long time to get nearly as good as you.
Fair enough. I appreciate that, by the way. Thank you. So in regard to let's actually go back. So I like to always go back with my guests and kind of discuss a little bit. So what kind of shows, I'm really curious, what kind of shows did you watch as a kid?
As a kid, I watched way too much TV.
Okay.
I would call it a problematic amount of TV.
Oh, God.
And it was like trash cartoons. It was like Cartoon Network, Nickelodeon, just a whole bunch of junk like that. None of it was particularly informative. Basically, the only PBS I ever remember watching as a kid was at the age of 9. By this point, I was too old to have a babysitter, but my parents felt like I needed to have a babysitter anyway. So there was this super religious woman who lived in our backyard who would babysit me, and the only thing I was allowed to do was watch Barney on PBS at age 9. Oh. And I just wanted... I was dying constantly. When I finally convinced my parents to let me stay home alone for the 3 hours after school before they got home from work, it was amazing because then I could watch all the trash TV I wanted. So, I watched Gargoyles, which was a great cartoon. I watched Batman the Animated Series, which we were just talking about before recording this. I watched, Doug and Rugrats.
Those are all good shows.
I mean, they were entertaining.
Yeah.
I don't know that I'm a better person for having spent all those hours of my life watching them.
It's valid. Yeah.
So.
But so would you say that with watching those shows as a kid, would you say that they maybe impacted you in the form of TV or, show that you kind of want to create here for the people? Maybe you saw the shows and you thought, oh, those are stupid kid shows, they're no good. Or, maybe there's nothing like informative, as you were saying earlier, about the show that really was going to be able to give back to the watcher, the viewer, and have them walk away being like, oh, well, now I know things better.
I have for a long time regretted the amount of time as a child that I spent in front of a TV.
Okay.
And so having the opportunity to put something out there that is a little more useful, I guess, that isn't going to rot your brain, does feel really good. Now, I'm not down on all media, and to be frank, I still watch a lot of really trashy television because, but the opportunity to put information out there in a way that I hope will be entertaining and engaging for people, I think is really exciting for me, because it's an opportunity to take some of those instincts that I have now where I want to inform and engage people and maybe put them in a medium that I would never by myself have the ability to do.
Of course. So realistically, so with the show we have coming up, what has been the, I guess, most exciting part about being like, oh yeah, I'm gonna have a show on TV. It's pretty cool.
For the first couple of test segments that I shot all by myself, where I literally spent 2 hours trying to set up the lights so that I wouldn't look terrible, I kept saying to myself, listen, this is not something I want to do, but it's something that I feel like I should do.
Yeah.
And then when I finally got you on board and we shot that first segment together, where, I, instead of scripting the whole thing, I had sort of just figured out a few things that I wanted to say. And that felt really, really good. That was the moment where this transformed from something I was doing because I felt like I should to something that I was really excited to be doing.
That's great. I think traditionally, like what I like to do with a lot of my productions, and that's not even like just video productions, it's like photo productions and even like graphic design projects that I like to work on. I actually try to get people into the environment to let them understand kind of what's going to happen. Like basically like, here is what you are going to get in the end. So like, graphic design, I'll pitch a project and be like, okay, here's what it might look like when it's all done, et cetera, et cetera. So it's like a mood board and you toss that all together and then you're like, boom, there you go. So that's another way you can do it with that. With like photography, you like give them a few examples of other photos that you're like, oh yeah, so we can make you look like Angelina Jolie. It's like, why not? Let's make it happen. So that's one thing you can do with that. But with video, I think it's really exciting to be able to be here in the space, but also to just kind of put people in that studio environment setup. I think, for me, I've done it for long enough that I'm just like, oh, I love this. This makes me so happy. But, for somebody that hasn't done that before, I don't want it to be an intimidating thing. And I try to, make it really welcoming and have like a very inviting set, if you will.
And it was really anxiety inducing for me at first because, every time I shot those things, I would look at them and I'd be like, God, this looks like trash. This is so bad. Like if I saw this on YouTube, I would never watch this.
Huh.
And part of what I really enjoyed about shooting that first segment with you and what I've enjoyed about working with you since then is that I have ideas for how I want things to feel. I have very specific ideas about that because I am trying to achieve a specific goal with the show. But working with you has been great because you know how to take those abstract ideas where, for example, I want to shoot the thing so that it feels like an intimate conversation, right? That feels like I'm having an intimate conversation with the person who's watching, with the other people who are going to be in the audience.
Yeah.
And you knew how to shoot that and how to light it in that way to recreate that sensation.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important for a show like this, but it's really, really hard for someone like me to know how to do.
Yeah, I think what I was able to help you do was really make it maybe not talking about the set per se, but I think the tone of the video that we were able to kind of crank out there in that test session, we were able to make it warm and welcoming. As a video, like you were watching it and you're like, oh, well, I'm really comfortable here, instead of, really like cold and dry. And I don't know, like most, I would say of the, I don't want to say like political, cause you're not quite doing a political show, but there's political aspects of it,
Mm-hmm.
So, I've seen a lot of those political shows though that are really just dry and cold and,
they feel very
watch that.
newsy.
Yeah.
Right. And the goal of this show is not to be newsy. I'm not attempting to inform people about current events. I'm really trying to get people to reflect on there's a reflection on current events, and I think that'll often be used as a frame in the show as a vehicle to discuss values. But the goal is less to inform and more to get people to think about what do we actually want to achieve and how can we use our values as a way to guide us to figure out what are the things that we have in common, so that, even if we think that the solution to a problem might be different, if we can recognize that we both share the same underlying value, that can maybe be a basis for working together.
Yeah. So I did have one question about how we're kind of forming this production, going into the pilot and everything as well. So when we had originally talked, I think this was before or maybe during our test session, where we're very much like you were headstrong on doing a call-in TV show. Then we ended up having like a further discussion later on and determining that it actually might be really good to have it be a live studio audience. Sure, that's a nerve-wracking thing right there. But what was that, I don't know, the feeling, like what was it like kind of going the direction of wanting to do the call-in show versus that live studio audience? Like what, for you, somebody that would qualify themselves as a not creative person, what was the feeling to have it be like the call-in show and how that affected the show and the impact of the show versus having the live studio audience and the impact of the show that can have as well?
So, like you said, I am really headstrong about this show because I do have very specific goals that I think I'm trying to achieve. And the reason why I initially we should have a live call-in show is because I think that having me look into a camera for 30 minutes and just talking at people is neither informative nor engaging, because it gives me a lot of opportunity to share my views, but I'm not John Oliver. I can't be that entertaining. No one's going to want to watch me for that long. And to be frank, I don't think I have 30 minutes to say on just about any topic for that matter.
Yeah.
But because the goal is to get people in the audience to reflect on their values and to see how their values inform how they view a topic, a really important aspect of that is inviting people to actually have a conversation with me so that I can engage with them about, I might say that because this is my value, this is the feeling that I have on a particular topic, but someone else might bring a different value to the table on that exact same topic. And having the opportunity to engage with the audience on that, and maybe even if I disagree with them, but without being disagreeable, I think that provides a really important element to a show like this. So the idea of doing a live call-in show at first was simply that it seemed logistically easy to do, right? Yeah. There was no pressure to have people in the studio. There was no pressure to have the thing framed or shot in a specific way, especially given the limited means that I myself personally had access to. Yeah. What we realized over time, in the course of our conversations, what you, I think, really persuaded me on was that, first of all, a live call-in show is really complicated because you really only get one shot at shooting anything, and it's got to be live broadcast. And, if you can get the infrastructure set up for something like that, it can be really effective, but it's also extremely difficult to do correctly.
Yeah.
And the other challenge with the call-in show is that, and I think this is something that you said to me as well, it's impersonal to talk to someone on the phone. Even if they can see me, I can't see them. Yeah. And so if they're asking a question or maybe saying something that I disagree with, there's a certain disconnect, a lack of empathy that can occur when they're just a voice in my head, right? As opposed to being a person who's in front of me where I can read the emotions on their face and they can see me and realize that I'm a real person too. Yeah. So by moving to the live studio audience, I think it will increase the amount of connection I can have with the people who will actually be there, who might have interesting things to say on the topic. Yeah. I think it also provides a better opportunity for us to put together a more interesting and engaging show.
Yeah, and I was really excited to kind of move that direction as well, strictly because it really can kind of produce this show to the extent of making it more, not so much just a show, but almost creating it kind of like an event. And really being able to market that event, because then people can want to come to the show. Sure, it's going to be limited to the number of people that can come on the show, et cetera, et cetera. But I think having that event marketing aspect of your show, I think is really awesome to be able to kind of provide to the community at large, because people can be like, watch the show, see the pilot, and be like, ooh, yeah, that's something like I really think I could bring up my values and come talk to him about it. And then they come to the show, and then it's able to kind of evolve the audience as we kind of keep going. And I think that's what's really exciting about the direction we're going with it now. I don't know what your opinion is on that, but that's what I'm excited for it.
I think those aspects are really exciting. And I think that because I think about this in a very naive way, and so I haven't considered a lot of those aspects yet. But I think you're right. The aspects of being an event, I think, are more important than maybe I'm giving them credit for.
Yeah.
So, I've told people this before. I don't really like music that much. I don't go to concerts. I think I've maybe been to 3 concerts in my entire life. And one of them I was sort of snuck into / tricked into going to, and it was in a cave in West Virginia.
All right. So I need a little background on that. Continue your story, but I need more background on that in a sec.
And so, and I've been listening to podcasts for years, but it wasn't until recently, this past summer, when the NPR Politics podcast was in Boulder, that I even went to my first live podcast taping. Going to those sorts of shows has a feel to it that I've never, I didn't understand that before, because, I listen to music. I don't really love music. I'm not in love with music. And so I undervalued those aspects of engagement with media that other people feel really strongly about that I simply don't. And I don't think there's a comparable opportunity in Longmont to go to a show on a regular basis and take part in a live taping. And I think that might be a novel experience for some people, and it might be something that some people are excited to come to, even if they don't care so much about the content, just for the experience of going to a live taping of a show every week. And I'm really looking forward to the possibility of having regulars, right? People who come every week, who we have conversations with, I can get to know them. And I'm especially looking forward to people who might disagree with my views, possibly really strongly.
Yeah.
I think part of what's exciting about putting a show together like this is that I want to share my views, not just with people who share my values, but with people who don't share my values.
Yeah.
And by doing that, and by doing it in person, I hope that we can also model respectful disagreement with people who don't share our values. And that is something you can really only do in person.
Yeah, I was really excited. So when we were doing the test shot specifically, I was really excited to see kind of your reaction to my off-the-wall, ass-back, middle of nowhere, racist call-in, basically. I'm not racist, but, I wanted to give you that like out of left field type of emotion to deal with. And I think you really dealt with it in a really fantastic way, where you really kind of talked them down, but you're also like, didn't really at the same time, because you just hung up on them, if you will, in that instance, because they were getting blatantly awful. And I think we needed to see what your reaction to that would be, to see how you would do. I know, sure, it was a call-in, but I was still physically in the room as the call-in was there. So realistically, it was still kind of that in-person type of response. So what was nice to see that you were able to react to that naturally, and I think that was impressive.
So I think part of what's important when you're engaging with people who you disagree with is to determine to what extent you can separate the views of that person from the person themselves.
Yeah.
I went to college in Indiana, and I was really lucky to have a group of people who I spent a lot of time with who completely disagreed with me on all things politics. They were extremely conservative. I'm extremely liberal.
Yeah.
But what was great was that we were friends outside of politics. Our friendship had no basis in politics, but we had the ability to talk to each other about them. And the ability that we had to respect each other and to have conversations where I would say something and they couldn't tell, I was being sincere, but they couldn't tell that I wasn't just making fun of them or goading them because our beliefs were so separated. Having that basis for understanding those sorts of interactions and not having to be hostile, even when you disagree with someone vehemently about something, I think is going to be a really important skill, and one that I need to hone specifically for this show. Because one thing I regret about my reaction to that test call from you was that I think that I was overly dismissive of the person. They had viewed, this person that you invented for this call, in my opinion, their views were reprehensible, but I think that I was more disrespectful to that person than I should have been.
Okay.
I think part of the goal of this show is going to be to engage people. Now, I'm in this sort of position where you're encouraging people to share views that you disagree with. It's really important to make sure that we're not providing an opportunity for people to amplify views that are harmful to society.
Yeah.
As I said in that test shot, the only thing that you can't tolerate in a tolerant society is intolerance. Mm-hmm. And this person was being intolerant. Now, at the same time, when you're engaging with someone like that, you also want to provide a safe space for them to air their views so that I can fully understand their perspective without amplifying their views, and give them my perspective on why maybe I think that their values are harmful, or why I think that they're reprehensible, but again, to do so in a way that's respectful. I hope to never have a reaction like I did to that test call again, because while I think it's interesting that you had a positive reaction to it, I had a very negative reaction to my response when I watched that test segment later.
Yeah.
Because I want to make sure that I am always going to be respectful to the people who are calling in, even if I disagree with them. I think that's incredibly important in a situation like this.
That's valid. So I watch media all the time, right? So I watch movies, I watch TV shows, etc. So I saw The Joker, right? Great movie.
I'm really excited to see. I still haven't seen it.
Fantastic movie. I'm not going to spoil anything. I'm just going to give you a frame of context here. So Joker, he goes live onto a television show. And in this, he confesses to crimes, like on live TV. And in this instance, everyone's like, are you serious?
Mm-hmm.
So realistically, I'm kind of curious, how would you deal with something like that, where they say that they come on there and they discuss their values and they talk about their values and you're like, oh, okay, you're feeling it. And then they're like, oh, you acted on your values of hating this type of person for whatever reason. How would you react to that? I'm kind of curious to just give a frame of context for everybody out there that has seen The Joker and understands what that can look like. How would you react to that?
Call me a king, you can buy me a crown. Oh, my.